Hi, Jewish Mom. I think I've mentioned to you several times in these pep talks that we often host groups through a company called Shabbat of a Lifetime. You can Google it, Shabbat of a Lifetime. It's an amazing company run by run by two of our friends. And basically what they do is they provide Shabbat meals, a traditional Shabbat, an Orthodox Shabbat experience for tourists who in almost all cases have never seen Shabbat before. So this past Shabbat, we had a group from Shabbat of a Lifetime, and what we like to do when we have these groups from Shabbat of a Lifetime is usually my husband tells a few stories, but something for us that we love to do is we love to ask the people what was the highlight of their trip to Israel. And we say like, what was the most moving thing, the most inspirational thing, the most memorable event during their trip. And so we had this really lovely group, a lovely American group from all different, from a bunch of different places in America. So we're going around, and one man from the group, he said in response, basically, my husband said, he said, why we like doing this is because, we've lived here for over 20 years. And we sort of forget like what an amazing place Israel is, and how, and so we love to sort of get a chance, we love to have a chance to see Israel through like through a newcomer's eyes, through a tourist's eyes, and it reminds us of what an amazing place this is. So this man, when we were doing this, when we were going around, he said, there's something which I named the ordinary monster. What's the ordinary monster? The ordinary monster is something in our hearts, a monster in our hearts, which takes amazing things and makes them ordinary. And why does this happen? How is it possible that the ordinary monster is able to eat up extraordinary experiences and make them ordinary? Because when it happens every day and every day and when it happens again and again and again and again, then we forget how extraordinary something is. And he told a story. He said that George Eastman, who was the founder of Kodak, of Eastman Kodak, so somebody once came into his office and said, wow, looked around like the office, and his office had like this big windows overlooking this amazing forest, like beautiful forest woods with like beautiful trees. And the person who came in the office said, look at this. This is amazing. Look where you are. You're so fortunate that every day you get to see this amazing, breathtaking view. And George Eastman just kind of like looked at the window as though he hadn't even really noticed what was there, and said, I've been in this office for so many years, I don't even notice it already. Right? The ordinary monster had already eaten it up. And this man, he said, our guest, he said, in my humble opinion, he said, I didn't read this anywhere, no one ever said this to me, but I think that that's the world to come. The world to come is a place where there's no ordinary monster. It's a place where we feel where you feel infinite pleasure and, and joy. Why? Because there's no ordinary monster eating up just every day, in the world to come. Then you just experience it again and again and again. It's always new and always exciting. And when I shared the story with my husband, he told me that he had been that once he entered a spice store, I think in Tel Aviv, and he walked in, and it was just he was just knocked over by just this amazing sense, that there was a smell of, he said, cinnamon and curry and coriander and all sorts of, and paprika. And it was just like, wow. And my husband said to the salesman, said, wow, you're so lucky that you work here. What an amazing place to work. You're surrounded by these smells all the time. And the man said, I'll tell you something, mister. It's a nightmare working here. Why? Because I've been working here for so many years. I don't smell it. I don't smell it already. He said, I can't smell any of it. I'm immune to it. I can't smell it anymore at all. And he said, I would give $10,000 just to be able to smell cinnamon again. The ordinary monster had already eaten it up a few years before, right? So I wanted to tell you something interesting that I've been doing for the last few Shabbats. I find, I've mentioned in the past in these pep talks, that I find, probably like many of us, I find Fridays challenging, especially Friday afternoons. So I've decided over the last few weeks, maybe for like the past 2 months or so, to walk to the grave of the Zvila Rebbe, which is right next to the Supreme Court. It's not very far from me. Maybe it's a 15-minute walk from our new home. Um, and um, so this is the grave site where I've gone. It's a very popular grave site to daven at, and it's a place where at certain periods of my life I've gone kind of every week, or even twice a week to this specific kever to daven, and so I started going every Friday. It's a place that I feel kind of amazing clarity, and so for me, what's been happening is I go on, like I leave like the real balagan of the Weisberg home on a Friday afternoon. I get things pretty much taken care of on Friday morning, and then everyone comes home. All of my kids, and this one wants to make a cake, and this one needs to make a sandwich, and this one it's like it just makes such a whatever. It's just basic. It's a lot of balagan, a lot of hectic, chaotic goings on in the Weisberg home and especially kitchen. And I just I, so I basically I get out for like an hour and a half. And so this past Friday I left the balagan, went to the kever, and I just sitting there. I just feel what I thought of this, like the clarity that I felt this past Friday. What I want to share with you is I just thought of the Zvila Rebbe, and he died. He passed away in 1950. And before he came to Israel, he had lived in the Soviet Union, and so he had been in a Soviet prison camp. I don't remember the exact details. A while back, I read a little bit of his biography, and so I remember that he spent some time in a Soviet prison camp, and I think a Soviet labor camp. And so that was his reality, like living in this, like living in this reality where, for somebody to keep Shabbat, for somebody to keep kosher, you had to like risk your life. You'd endanger your life to keep Shabbat, right? And also, of course, he was alive. Not that he was in the show, not that he was in the Shoah. He wasn't in like the, in the in a concentration camp. But he lived at that time, and that was his context. And then he moved to Israel, and he was a Rebbe here. Um, and um, and I was just thinking, like, what that experience must have been for him to go through, like, to live at a time where Jews were being murdered for being Jews, for a Jew to keep Shabbat, for a Jew to keep kosher, in Europe under the Nazis, or even in the Soviet Union under the Soviets, under the communists, to do what we take for granted. It was something you'd have to, be willing to lose your life. To light Shabbat candles, to have a challah on your table, to give a circumcision to your newborn son, to anything, so the things that we take for granted, to keep kosher, to go to the mikvah, all these things, that there were things that you'd risk, like you very easily could lose your life just keeping the most basic mitzvot in Judaism, you know, um, and um, and just sitting there, I just felt such clarity of like what an incredible privilege it is, and I feel this every week. What an incredible privilege it is, like to come back to my home, with my kids who are living, my son's wearing kippah, my daughter is clearly dressed in a Jewish way, a modest way, and me with my hair covered, like we dress in a publicly Jewish fashion, living as Jews, keeping Shabbat, speaking Hebrew, learning, studying Torah, and my children in Jewish schools, and my husband teaching Torah, and keeping Shabbat, and having many Shabbat guests. And it's like just what a privilege. Not only that, we even live in Israel. We're doing something that, for 2,000 years, the Jewish people, almost every Jew was like dreaming and praying every day to be here, to do what I'm doing, like just to live here, to live in Yerushalayim, Ir HaKodesh, and it's something that it was just like, so I've been doing this every Friday, and just I come home, and it just takes away the ordinary monster. Like the ordinary monster, just like it just gets rid of him. Every time I go to Zvil, I come back to my house, and I'm like, I'm living it. I'm living the dream. I'm here. It's gonna be Shabbos soon. Like it's gonna be like, and we're getting ready for Shabbat. And there's chicken soup on the stove, and my husband's gonna make kiddush, and we have challah, and my kids are wearing Shabbat clothing, and and it's just amazing that we're here. It just gets rid of it just kills the ordinary monster. And I find, for the rest of Shabbat, it really just really keeps. I hope it will continue. I hope the ordinary monster doesn't end up eating my experience with the Rebbe Musvil, the Zvila Rebbe, which is quite possible. But in the meantime, it really just helps me get rid of the ordinary monster. Like just see my home like, wow, wow, wow. I'm a Jewish mom. I'm living in Israel. And even if I wasn't living in Israel, like I'm sure many people listening to this are not living in Israel, just living a Jewish life, being a Jewish mother, raising Jewish children. I mean, it's phenomenal. There's nothing ordinary about it at all. It's extraordinary. How many Jews in how many different situations in history would give anything, to be able to do what we just do every single week, every single day, openly raising observant Jewish children, eating kosher food, keeping Shabbat, dressing publicly like Jews. It's extraordinary. And so I just want to bless all of us to remember, the ordinary monster. It's so easy for the ordinary monster to come and eat up so much of what is extraordinary in our lives. And I just want to bless all of us that we should just, try and limit him, try and limit the ordinary monster, and in that way, that's at Hashem, like what this man said about the world to come as a place where there's no ordinary monster. So I don't know, it's not based on anything and da. But that sort of rings true with me that by getting rid of the ordinary monster, B'ezrat Hashem, we should be able to feel a bit of the world to come right here today. I'm going to bless all of you Jewish moms with an amazing, amazing week. Kol Tov.